this is why Bitcoin will win, because people will figure it out. You will figure it out. More and more young people will figure this out, right?
All I see is groceries going through the roof, fuel going through the roof, houses going through the roof, and I don't understand why everything has to get more and more expensive around me, even though I'm putting in just as much effort and my raise is not keeping up with the rate of inflation. So how can I look to the future excited
about, I'm going into these tokens because I'm hoping, right, they go up, and you have like the unit bias, because the Bitcoin one is 50,000 and this other one is like one. Well, maybe it could become 50,000 and blah. Like you're participating in a game that you clearly don't understand.
Alrighty guys, welcome back. Today we have a very special guest. We have Bitcoin Bram on for the show. I've been watching you for quite a while, so it's an honor to have you on, man. How you going?
Super stoked to talk to you, man. I think it's still crazy to hear, and you'll experience this too when you just continue with your podcast, like how many people you can reach all over the world, which is just an insane thing to experience. And I always thought, the magic of the internet, I knew that already, that you can reach a lot of people, but when you do a podcast, I think there's just this whole other dynamic and reach that you can have. So it's very fun to hear that you've been listening to the podcast. I'm very excited to hear that. Yeah, awesome.
I saw you were at the Las Vegas Bitcoin conference, and I'm sure you had a whole bunch of people coming up to get a photo, meet you. That must have been pretty crazy. How was that?
That is super crazy. That's what I mean. Like I like 10 years ago, I launched a startup, or like a digital product that went quite viral, and eventually that had over like 1 million users, and I did like some talks at like some conferences, and there already I experienced that, people recognize you, or it's like, hey, you made this thing. So I kind of like know that, like I've experienced that before, but walking around at a Bitcoin conference, having literally like a few hundred people coming up to me in 3-4 days is insane. But that's what I meant. Like, it's just really cool to see that you're reaching real people. When I see comments on YouTube, I just think, like, I rarely comment on a video, like these are all real people, or when I get messages and stuff like that. So it's just very rewarding to talk in my own way about something that I think is the most important topic in the world, like you were doing too, right? And I think it's just really fun to see how you can reach real people just by doing that.
Yeah, I think Bitcoin is sort of known to be friendly and accommodating to new Bitcoiners. And so even you saying yes to come on my show, probably getting like 20 views, 40 views, who knows what happens, hopefully a bit more. It's just really generous. And I think even Jeff Booth, I reached out to him a few times hoping he would reply just out of magic. And then he replied, he's like, yeah, let's do one in August. And I'm like, why? Like, what do you get back? But
Of course.
I think
I had him on in episode 10.
yeah, awesome.
So he does that, like, it's amazing. It's really cool.
It's just so cool. I think Bitcoiners really give back to that community and try and grow adoption just through even the small people and try and build this thing from the ground up. So now it's awesome having you on. And I just wanted to kick off. What year did you first discover Bitcoin? And then when did you actually start buying Bitcoin?
So I discovered Bitcoin in 2013. I had a friend who sent me a video, which is on Vimeo actually, and now it's private. So I always share this story, but I cannot link to the video, unfortunately. But that video was called something like Bitcoin Explained. It was just a very practical, informational video explaining Bitcoin, and it triggered me because I'm just I'm like an internet native, right? I've been on the internet since I was like 12 or something. I don't know, just messing around and seeing what people are building. And so when I came across Bitcoin, I thought about it like, hey, this is a currency for the internet, which makes a lot of sense. But I always looked at it, of course, in the beginning, like many people, like, hey, this is something I can trade. Hey, it's going up. Maybe I can earn some money. And I was like a student back then, so I didn't have a lot of money. So I was like, okay, I'm going to trade. But there were all these like shady Chinese exchanges and stuff like that. And so what I did in the beginning was just trading. I had two friends, and the first, like, after I discovered it, I didn't really like study it. I just started trading it with them. So we day traded for like 3 months or something. And after that, I once went to bed and I was like hallucinating, like seeing all the charts. And I was like, okay, I'm not a trader. I'm way too emotional to be a trader. So I also share that, like, then I held it, right? But eventually, you have other interests and distractions and other topics you come across. So I always share, like, I bought between 100 and 300, but I sold everything at 4,000. Um, which just really showed I didn't understand it yet. Although I do have tweets from 2013 where I say something like, Bitcoin is a synthesized digital commodity that you can trade with 24/7, 365 with anyone in the world. And when I read that, I'm like, damn, like I got it, but I didn't get it. You know what I mean? So there are just so many dimensions to Bitcoin and understanding it. Why does this exist? What is the real problem that it solves? How does this solve it in a better way than any other alternative, right? Like, it just takes time to understand why this thing exists, why it works, and why it will basically never die and never go away. So that took me some years on and off. um, uh, and yeah, over time, I discovered Ethereum at like $7. I felt like, okay, this is going to be like the computer of the internet network, whatever. Like, I dove into like all the crypto stuff. I like ICOs, NFTs, stuff like that, just more out of interest. So I would say out of interest, but also because I thought, this is a way to make money. I think this is how everyone looks at crypto, basically. But then over time, yeah, I just realized there's only one digital asset you have to pay attention to, and that is Bitcoin. And I think, like, about 3-ish years ago, I started to really dive into kind of like the financial and economic dimensions of Bitcoin, which made me understand the reason of existence for Bitcoin even better. And then I just decided to really go more all in than I was before. I think I was all in from like 2018 ish. But that really made me like spend more time and energy also on Bitcoin and starting a podcast and stuff like that. So I always share, like, I've been in Bitcoin since 2013, but like on and off as the waves of understanding and interests like came and went. And now I wake up every day and think about Bitcoin. So that's where I'm at right now.
It's quite a different story to me. I was in school around 17. I'm only 21 now, so I was still very fresh to crypto and Bitcoin. And I discovered crypto first, understood, oh, okay, Bitcoin's obviously the big dog. That one's already had its run. It's too late. I need to get some
Yeah,
of
yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
need to get some of these small tokens I can afford. I mucked around with Cardano, Solana, XRP, things like that. I was very convincing, so I convinced most of my year level, like probably at least 20 people, to invest in crypto. And it was in the bull run though, so people were making money, people were happy, people were investing in everything, and
Yeah.
people were making money. And so it was such a funny period of time. And then we sort of went into this bear market. And I watched Bitcoin go from, in Australia, it reached 100,000 Aussie dollars, which would have been 60,000 US. And then it plummeted all the way down to about 25,000 Aussie dollars. So that would have been probably 15 or 17,000 US. And it was a realization that although Bitcoin had already had its run, it still had cycles and it still had volatility. And this was very new to me. I joined thinking everything was green. I didn't even look at the history, didn't understand cycles, didn't understand Bitcoin having a capped supply, whereas other cryptos were just linked to a CEO, a business, a structure of some sort of entity trying to raise capital. And so the whole bear market I spent trying to accumulate these other cryptos, hoping that next run, because everyone talked about this altcoin season, that I would,
Hoping.
yeah, hoping that oh, well, if Cardano reached, $3 US, next time it might reach 10. So I'm going to get as many of these tokens as possible. And so I reached probably 20,000 Cardano tokens, which is a big deal. And I did all this and did all that, and nothing ever recovered, nothing ever grew. And it was just a realization that, oh, maybe these are just based on hype and raising capital. Maybe there's not actually that much more to some of these coins. And it was sort of suddenly I was watching random Bitcoin videos going, okay, well, why is Bitcoin recovering and nothing else is recovering? Why is this having a superior bounce back? And as I started to learn, there was actually this whole big picture where Bitcoin fits in, understanding why it has value compared to the other ones, how different it was, bounded by energy, cap supply, a currency, global trade, like insanity. And I slowly started to make the shift. And this was only probably like a year and a half ago, coming up to probably 2 years or so, where I started to trade each coin into Bitcoin. And eventually it just became all in Bitcoin because I was no longer just hoping for the next altcoin season or next bull run. I understood where Bitcoin was headed, understood that this could be a 5 or 10 year, 15, 20-year play, and not just trying to get rich as quick as possible at 17, 18, 19. And now understanding at 21, this is something I don't want to be selling for a long time. And my version of selling would be using it. And so now at the point where I'm pretty much all in on Bitcoin, uh, sometimes I have to spend it, and I don't want to do that. But I use different apps and things that can just make purchases. And Australia is fairly behind in that aspect. We don't have Steak and Shake over in Australia or anything like that. But I'm doing it in a way where, I'm making purchases with Bitcoin and using it as money, doing my best to not just treat it like an investment, but as a money. And yeah, no, it's been a very interesting journey. Now I just wish I was buying Bitcoin only for the last 4 years because I'd be a very wealthy 21-year-old, and I jumped on a bit late, but now I'm
No, dude. I just want to say it fills my heart with joy to hear this, dude. Like the fact that you are 21 and you figured out that Bitcoin is the way for you to secure your financial future, to save in. Fucking amazing, dude. Like that is, I think, why Bitcoin will win. This is I'm gonna post this on my channel too. I want to clip it. Like this is what I want to share to people. Like this is why Bitcoin will win, because people will figure it out. You will figure it out. More and more young people will figure this out, right? Your generation has all the information in the world at their fingertips with the internet, all the productivity at their fingertips with AI. You can do anything you want, you can research anything you want. And that is just such a threat to centralized institutions that are trying to tell you how something works. But I'd love to share to more younger people, and I would like to invite you to just do not stop with this podcast. Try to reach more of your generation, like I'm trying to do. This is what you can do, and maybe like I don't want to interview you, but I would love to learn, like, how do you feel having figured this out? Because what I remember from like your age, like you're probably studying, or you're done, or you're thinking about, what does my future look like, what am I going to do? You have a wife, like a young family, maybe you want to start a family and stuff like that. So everyone thinks about their future, but what I felt is that by adopting Bitcoin, I'm in a different life phase than you, but like by adopting Bitcoin, I just lowered my uncertainty towards the future, which makes me way more conscious in the now, right? Like I feel like I'm way more aware and conscious about my decisions. Like I love what you said about, I'm going into these tokens because I'm hoping, right, they go up, and you have like the unit bias because the Bitcoin one is 50,000 and this other one is like one. Well, maybe it could become 50,000 and blah. Like you're participating in a game that you clearly don't understand. Again, I did the same, right? And what I feel that Bitcoin brought me is just it forces you to think, because once you think for yourself and you do the study and you reflect on it, right, and you figure out that yes, Bitcoin is really this thing that I can use to secure my financial future, that is such an amazing thing to realize, that you can trust your own thinking, that when you do the work, you get a certain reward for that, which isn't necessarily financially, right? It's more like time and like trust in yourself and stuff like that. So I don't even know what I asked you, but this is like, I just love, I love hearing this, dude. Like I'm very happy for you that you figured this out so early.
What I think is sad is this is sort of what's happening. So people are leaving school, they're getting chucked into this big world, and they have no education on money. They have no education on the Federal Reserve. They have no education that money can just be printed at hand. They have no idea what centralization versus decentralization is. And so they're chucked into this world where nothing looks optimistic. They're chucked into a world where houses are now $600,000 in Australia, and the average wage is say 50,000, 60,000, and they're looking to the future and they're borderline hopeless. And so they are so desperate. It is creating so much degeneracy in this youth coming through, where they're putting their entire net worth, their entire savings that their parents set aside in things like Cardano or things like literal coins called fart coin. And they're rolling the dice, hoping this is it. Maybe I can actually break out of this system, because otherwise I'm stuck at my parents' house till I'm 25 or 30. And I feel like maybe I'll never have a family. Maybe I don't want to settle down because I'm so uncertain about the future. All I see is groceries going through the roof, fuel going through the roof, houses going through the roof. And I don't understand why everything has to get more and more expensive around me, even though I'm putting in just as much effort and my raise is not keeping up with the rate of inflation. So, how can I look to the future excited? And so, it's really sad because I was in the same boat in some sense. And I'm very blessed with my family and things. Like if I had to stay home, I could do it. But I felt the pressure. And so imagine the people that didn't have family support. Imagine the people that really did think this world is hopeless. Like that's so sad. And that is purely because of the money being broken. And not understanding that has huge repercussions. And so for me, to ask like what I feel adopting Bitcoin as money and as savings and as a store of value is going, oh, I actually don't have to go get a credit card. I don't have to take on huge loans just to survive. I don't have to try and take advantage of a broken system. I can actually exit this system, join the Bitcoin standard, and live fruitfully and go to work, trade my time and energy for money, but then trade that crappy dollar into the best money in the world. And so I now understand, hey, if I put in the time and the energy when I'm youthful and I can actually go work hard, I will get rewarded long term, because I'm now understanding that the fruits of my labor are through Bitcoin as money. And so, sorry that I'm going on a bit of a rant, but this is just,
No, I love it.
this
Yeah.
is really a sad reality for young people, man. Like, this is how it is. This is such a common mentality now that it's like, well, what's the point? Let's just roll the dice with this crypto meme coin. Like, let's invest in Pizza Guy or Cat Dog Wolf. Like, it's just like, how have we got to this point, man? Like, you've got 16-year-olds
Yeah.
chucking their life savings away and hoping that there's something out there. And yeah, it's just unfortunate, man. It's just this culture and sentiment right now is pretty toxic, but I don't think it's the kids' fault and I don't think it's the youth's fault. I think it's the system around them is just crumbling. And unless you got in early and you have 10 houses now, maybe you will never need Bitcoin. But the people coming through right now, like they need Bitcoin more than ever. And so I think it's time for the youth to wake up and start looking at this thing seriously, man. It's not just another crypto. What are your thoughts on that? Not just another crypto.
I mean, that is very true, but it's I think it's also a symptom of what you're describing, right? The fact that there's just so much distraction, and it's really hard. It is hard to think for yourself. That's kind of what I also wanted to add. It is very hard to think for yourself, and that's why when you do on the topic of money and figure out Bitcoin, that is just such a huge reward. I think that's also and I don't want to speak for you, but definitely my motivation is like I want to tell other people. You know what I mean? Like I want to tell them. I want to wake them up and say like, hey, this doesn't work how you think it works, or this doesn't work how you've basically never thought about how this works, right? Like there is another way. There aren't like other people that have truly figured it out, and you were just a subject in this life. I think I talk about that a lot. Like, are you a subject or an actor, or how do you feel, right? Do you feel like a subject, or do you feel like an actor, right? Like if your mind and thoughts, like if that creates your reality, if you just think like, oh yeah, whatever, there's just other people that decide how much my money is worth, or tax me in this or that way, and I can never do anything about it, yeah, then you can also never do anything about it, right? But that's why Bitcoin is a silent and non-violent protest against that. You are just moving to another money. Like Bitcoin is not an investment, it's a superior savings technology, and superior money, and you can just move to that whenever you want. Like that is how you take power away from the people that um, are closer to the origination of the fiat money and can spend it without it being inflated on stuff that doesn't serve you, right? Like if you have an example, in America, they pay like 100 billion per month to interest on their debt. So whether that comes from citizens, the 100 billion in text, that 100 billion doesn't go to anything that serves the citizens, or if the 100 billion is created from nothing, just $100 billion units extra in the money supply, that debases all the existing money units, right? So either way, left or right, the people are paying for other people. It's just other people in your government. It's just other people that are not doing their job, or they're abusing their position that they have in their job to serve themselves and not you, right? And I think many people will think like, oh, this sounds like a conspiracy and blah blah. Yeah, I thought that too, but this is how it works, right? It's just other people that can use a certain position in a system that's also created by other people to benefit themselves and not you. If you have these examples in Australia, I have them too here in Western Europe. Like I'm now old enough that I can say, well, I really think my country is different than 20 years ago, and not in a good way, which is weird because technological advancements and innovations and stuff like that should make your life better, more productive. Like there should be more abundance in general, more safety, more food and stuff like that. But that is not what you're seeing, right? And sometimes I see these videos from like Sydney or somewhere where you have just like crappy ass houses for like 2 million Aussie dollars or something, which I think is a million USD, or like that's how I calculate. But and then you're like, what? Like everyone sees that's not the value of this home, just objectively. If you just use your eyes and picture like $1 million house, US dollar house, that is not the house you are picturing, right? And I think that's what a lot of people struggle with. I think it's hard to when you're confronted with something like that, especially as a young person trying to find a home, right, or moving out of your parents' home and stuff like that. When you're in that phase of your life, understanding why that is happening, why it is unreachable for you, is very rough. I think that's a rough thing to experience, and a very hard thing to understand. And that's what I mean with like the thinking for yourself part. It's, hey, there's like my parents told me something, the TV told me something, the school told me something, and now in reality, when I have certain wants or needs, right, like for example, I want to move out of my parents' home, I cannot do that. That's strange. Why is that? And I think that's what a lot of people struggle with. They're dropped into this reality that no one really prepared them for, that honestly also a lot of other people don't really know is the actual reality, right? And again, that's why I think it's amazing that you figured it out at your age, and are trying to reach more people, because that's the way to go, right? Like I heard an amazing tactic, which I'm not employing either, but I'm going to do that for like if you want to convince someone of Bitcoin, you can be like, okay, we can send like a little transaction. But I heard this tactic, which I think is great. You should just have these people create like an exchange account somewhere where they have like a payment card. And then you say, like, instead of putting your grocery money on your bank account, if you like, for example, I have a dedicated bank account for groceries, so we put like money on there every month. Instead of putting money on that you buy Bitcoin, you put it on your account at this exchange, and you start paying with this card for your groceries. And over time, you will see that you don't feel that the groceries become more expensive, because you are keeping up with inflation if you keep your grocery money in Bitcoin, basically. So that's what I had to think about when you were also talking about like having the cards or how can you spend. So it made me realize, like, yeah, I should do that, because I would love to run an experiment for like 6 months just to see if it's really working like that. Because even if you have money, you're not struggling with the prices, like, everyone understands that everything is becoming more expensive, right? So even understanding that, even feeling that without understanding it is has a certain psychological burden, right? Like whatever age you are. And I think that's what I mean when I talk about this uncertainty towards the future. If you are experiencing something in your reality that you are confronted with, but you don't understand why it's happening, and then to maybe realize that you've never thought about it, so that gives you stress, right, or anxiety about, okay, how do I deal with this situation? I think that's what constantly happens, and happens even more to people that haven't figured out that the problem is the money. So that was a very long answer, but I think um, yeah, this is kind of how I think about it, in a sense of like, if you do the work, the uncomfortable work of studying Bitcoin and understanding that your money is broken and Bitcoin is a solution for you, that is what actually will give you freedom in your mind when you adopt Bitcoin, and when you adopt it in that way for groceries, and when you see that other people are still struggling while you have figured it out. um, it's just very relieving. I think that's what I wanted to share.
Yeah, I heard Jeff Booth put in like an analogy on people that are in the fiat system that could easily enter Bitcoin, and it's kind of like prisoners in a prison where they're yelling at the captures, the people that have caught them, and saying, let me out, open the door. And it's like the door's already open. Bitcoin opened that door. And so you no longer really have an excuse. If you've heard about Bitcoin and you haven't taken it seriously, you haven't even looked into it, you need to have a second look, because there actually is a chance to opt out of this fiat system, this centralized system, this money printer system, join the new system, and completely change your life. I think you adopt Bitcoin and you notice that life not only stays the same expense, but it actually gets cheaper and cheaper and cheaper. And I've even found that in the last 6 months or so, Bitcoin that I set aside for something on Amazon that I needed to buy, I set aside in Bitcoin. I have now spent it for that item that I needed, and it's 50% cheaper than it was. And so as its price continues to rise, all prices trend to zero around it, because it has scarcity. Everything that is not scarce will eventually go down in price against something that is scarce, because it just sucks up capital. Can you sort of go into how Bitcoin is the best money vacuum? How can it be the superior store of value, not only from leeching from other assets, but as new dollars come into the system, how can it sort of suck those new dollars up?
Yeah, so this starts with understanding that what you think is money isn't necessarily money, to per the definition of money. So money should have three characteristics, right? It's a medium of exchange, so I can give you units and you give me a good or service in return. Well, in that sense, this could be money. I give you this thing, right? But that's where the bartering came from. Like, I give you one thing, you give me another thing. The second one is store value. So the thing we use as money, and you can think about money as a technology, or it's a tool to trade, basically. It should be a store of value. So whatever it's valued at, it should be valued at that value constantly, if that makes sense. So it's not about can I save in it, right? Can I save more units? No, it's about, does each individual unit keep the same amount of value that is stored in it? And the third one is unit of account. So that's just calculating with accounting and stuff like that. So which is eventually the most important part, because that's where the other ones, I would say, emanate from, right? Because if you account in a certain money, you also connect certain value to whatever you're accounting, right? So if it's machines or an inventory or a property or whatever, you're valuing that at the unit of that money, so in Bitcoin or in euro or dollars. But what we think is money, so these units of Aussie dollars or euros, yen, pound, US dollars, they are basically all the same. They these units are created by the press of a button, by central banks, by commercial banks also. And so if you just think about like a scale, and on one side there's an amount of goods and services, and on the other side there's the amount of units of a money, of a currency on the other side. If the amount of money, just the amount of units increases, becomes heavier, right? If it becomes more heavy, it goes down. You need, like, the amount, or how do you say, like the prices of the goods and services go up, because there are more units chasing the same amount of goods and services, basically. So when you talk about inflation, you should talk, there's different types of inflation. You have price inflation, right? Prices going up. But when you talk about inflation in economic terms, it's inflating the supply of the money. So more units. So more units devalue each existing unit already. So when you use a fiat money like Aussie dollars or euros or yen, etc., fiat me in Latin means let there be, or let it be. So it's like, let there be money. It's literally in the name. It's just created from nothing. If you understand that when you trade money, right? When we have a value exchange with each other, and I buy the wooden mirror behind you, right? In that mirror, there was energy that was expended to create this mirror, right? There's wood that grew from the energy from the sun, and someone chopped that up and designed the mirror. Someone got the sand, transported the sand, sanded the, created the mirror, like all that stuff. And so when you realize that everything around you, everything you see costs energy to create or maintain, then when we do a value exchange, we're basically trading units of energy. And if I do something for you, like I build something, like I do your garden, whatever, I expend my energy in a limited amount, in a certain amount of time. But my time in this reality has a limit, right? I don't know. Everyone's going to die. You don't know when you die. So there's an absolute limit to the time that and the energy in that time that you can expend in your in your life. So what we trade our time and energy for, which is an absolute finite limited unit, that when we have expended it, it's gone forever. It's put into something that we create or do. When you trade that in a value exchange for a reward that is constantly losing its value because there's a third party that creates more of these units constantly, right? So almost everywhere in the world, they believe they follow a certain economic doctrine, right? Keynesian economics, and they say no, 2% losing, like adding 2% to the money supply, which means devaluing each individual unit with 2% every year, actually incentivizes people to spend that money. So by following this model, they're trying to influence human behavior, which is very contrarian to another way of economic thinking, which is Austrian thinking, Austrian economics, which really revolves around human action, which says, well, if a human has wants or needs, they will do it anyway. They will go for it. They will, if I want to build a certain company or I have an idea, I'm going to do it. If I'm hungry, I'm going to buy a bread, right? Like it doesn't really matter what the bread costs. So it's more about there are human needs and wants and desires, and those should be the foundation of a marketplace of value exchanges and people creating products and services to serve those wants, needs, and desires. But we are living in a financial system that creates 2% more money units, so it devalues every individual unit by 2%. So you are incentivized to spend that money. There's a guy called Seb Bunny that I had on a podcast, and he told me, when you realize that all the money you have today is worth the most today, then you will start spending it tomorrow, because the day after tomorrow it's even worth less. It's a very tiny bit, right? But it's more the concept that you have to understand that if you want to save, so we go back to the property of the money, right? If you want it to be a store of value, you can accumulate more of these units, but per definition, per design, each of the units lose at least 2% in value every year. And in reality, in practice, it's probably closer to 10%. So when you take risk doing a job or a venture, expending your energy and time, and then getting a reward that can be created by other people infinitely, right? So you are trading something finite for something that can be created infinitely, which is the dumbest trade that anyone can do. You have all these units, you take them home, and then when you come home, you have to figure out, how do I mitigate, well, let's be nice, 7% of debasement every year? How do I do that? So when I'm home and I want to hang out with my wife and my kids, I still have to figure out, take more risk to mitigate at least 7% to be able to use the money as a store of value, to have it represent the same amount of basically purchasing power into the future. Because if I want to start a family or buy a home or move out, right, or do a study or start a company, whatever I want to do with supposedly my money, I should be able to do that tomorrow, next month, in 2 years, in 10 years, whatever my plan is, right? But if you are forced to basically spend it instead of saving it, you can never create this time and space, right? Because with the money, you basically buy time to try something, if that makes sense. So if you start a company, the company is not a success tomorrow. Maybe you have to try for 2 years for it to become successful. Or maybe it fails because you suck, which is also okay, right? But you need something, capital, right? Pooled capital, pooled money, to create a window of opportunity to do something. Even if you want to move to Western Australia, you need time to even travel there to see where you want to live and go around or whatever. Like you need, if you want to build stuff in your life, you need to pool capital together. So you have to pool money together. But if that loses value constantly, you first have to take more risk to mitigate the loss, and then maybe you can do something, right? So you have to take on more risk unknowingly. So you have a job or a venture, and you come home and you basically have another job, which you don't really knew you had. So what are people doing to mitigate this loss of constant programmed loss of value? They're trying to find replacements for their money to mitigate this loss. the most obvious thing is to put it in scarce assets that are hard to create more of. The one that people know best is probably real estate, right? People are buying real estate. They think, real estate is always in demand. You cannot quickly build another home. You can build more homes, right? But there's a certain rate at which the amount of homes increases. Same with gold, for example. Gold is very, very scarce. The inflation of gold is like, I think it's like 1.8% or 2.1% a year. So that's new gold dug out of the ground. So that says something about the scarcity. So people are moving from their let's call it the cash money, just sitting in their bank, losing value, or sitting under their mattress, losing value. They're trying to put it in other things that they hope will mitigate and maybe even mitigate that loss of value, and maybe even have a few percentages of let's call it profit. So people are doing that in all these different things, even in sneakers, whiskey, classic cars, whatever. But all these assets have certain characteristics. Like if I want to sell a home, I cannot do that instantly, for example. Like I have to have a realtor, or I have to promote it somewhere. I have to find the right people that want to buy it, also for the price that I want. Same goes for the whiskey, for the cars, for the sneakers, even for the gold, which has other challenges, right? Like, do I keep my own gold or do I outsource it? How do I know the gold is real? Like every financial asset that you can use to store value, because you cannot use it in the money, has different characteristics that give it also a certain risk profile for you to use. Then when we have Bitcoin, so when we introduce Bitcoin to this mix, Bitcoin has characteristics that are superior to any other characteristic of any other financial asset. So when you study Bitcoin and understand that it is portable, it's teleportable, right? I can send Bitcoin right now to you. I can sell my Bitcoin instantly to someone I don't know anywhere in the world. And that's the whole point. Like, it doesn't really matter that I don't know them. I don't have to look for a buyer. It's traded 24/7, 365. I can take my Bitcoin in my head and go to another country. I don't have to put gold in my butt, right? Like, I cannot take the title deed of my home. Like, think about that, right? So I think this is the answer, by the way. So over time, more and more people will figure out that this is a superior store of value financial asset, which we can also trade with each other. So it's also a medium of exchange, but I think that comes later, because most people don't even understand yet what I just talked about. But I think the losing of value of your wealth is a very clear use case. Do you want that or not? If you don't want that, you have to find a way to mitigate that loss. That's either taking more risk, starting to trade and blah blah blah, or you're just trying to find, or you find another asset that has better properties, so you can actually use it as a store of value. Over time, more and more people will realize that Bitcoin is the superior savings technology, is the superior store of value. And that's why it will take all the premium away from assets where people are now storing their value, like real estate, like gold, stuff like that. So the scarcest asset in the world, provably, verifiably, for anyone in the world, is Bitcoin. And it has these characteristics that make it also better, like the transportability, etc., what I just mentioned. So once more and more people start figuring that out, more and more people will just move to Bitcoin as their store of value. Now think about this, like Bitcoin is also really, truly the only thing, or like the only thing that you can truly own next to your time as a human, right? You can take the Bitcoin doesn't exist on a wallet. It doesn't exist on an exchange. It doesn't exist in your computer. It exists in like the metaphysical space almost, and it consists of letters and numbers, which are basically speech, right? So no one conceptually, could ever force you to give up your private key, right? Because when I say to you, like, hey, I know you have Bitcoin, tell me your private key, and then you say, no, I forgot the private key, or I don't know the I don't know the private key. So does that mean I don't have it? Well, you say you have it. Can you prove it to me? Well, you don't have the key. I don't have the key either. So I don't know where the Bitcoin is, but it's not here in my possession. I find that a very interesting thought. Like this is an interesting discussion, because when you have gold, when I see you carrying gold and I shoot you and I take your gold, then I have the gold, basically, right? But when you like you can hold gold, but for example, when you think about real estate, right? Do you hold the real estate? No, you have a title deed that is given to you by the municipality, other people, which is stamped by some notary, which is also another person. And on that document that has all these, legal agreements, etc., like everything around it, the whole judiciary system, etc., like this whole legal stuff, that is what says, hey, this is Bram and he's the owner of blah, blah, blah. So let's say the Russians come to my country, I have to flee, I take my little title deed, and I end up in, I don't know, Spain, and I say like, hey, look at this. Look at this, there's a paper here. And this paper says that I own a certain home somewhere. And here is another paper from this guy that says he's a realtor. He has a diploma that says he's a realtor. And he did a value estimation, and it's like €1 million. So look, I have two papers here. Now give me some food or give me some gas for my car, because I'm good for this. Look, this is my wealth. I should think about making this more ridiculous, but this is what I'm thinking about. Like, it's not your property, it's not yours. Like, there are abstractions, there are layers of abstractions that help you to in some way prove that it is your property, but you don't have it. You have two papers in your hand, basically, right? You didn't take this property. And so there, I'll round it up, but there's like for each of these financial assets that you can use to store your value, there are different characteristics that have certain implications. And when you put them all together, you will see that Bitcoin has the superior characteristics. And yeah, again, over time, more and more people will figure that out, and that's why the price will go up. And I would say, don't even say price; it's more like an exchange rate. So if you think about Bitcoin as a better money, better store of value, better medium of exchange, it's an exchange rate with other monies. So a few years ago, you needed $5,000 units for one Bitcoin. Now you need over $100,000 units for one Bitcoin. So which one is a better money?
Yeah, man, you unpacked a lot there. That was awesome. I wish you were my teacher at school. I think I actually would have learned a lot more than just 99% of the absolute rubbish I learnt. Uh, what frustrates me with Bitcoin is they will compare it to gold and they'll go, well, at least gold's physical. It's right there, But I'm like, that's a flaw. Like, do you not see how that's a problem? Like,
That's part of the scam.
it's so easy. You just come in, oh, you've got the gold, boom, give me the gold. Now
This has value. This has
oh, well, I
value.
take that. Now
I
I
can
have
hold
it.
it.
Yeah, it's just
Yeah.
like, that's actually a flaw of gold. And therefore, that's why it failed as money in my eyes. It wasn't available for global trade. Now, imagine right now we see the wars going on everywhere in the world, but let's talk about Tehran versus Israel, for example. Imagine you're in Tehran right now and you have, $2 million house, you have gold buried in the backyard, bomb lands, boom, house gone. You don't have time to get the
Yeah,
gold.
gold flying everywhere.
Gold might be flying everywhere, or you're trying to take this
Yeah.
huge bar in a backpack as bombs are flying. You're trying to run with it. It falls out the backpack. Do you go back for it? Like, what do I do?
Mhm.
Now, imagine these people instead saw that potentially their country is under attack. I think we sort of saw this unfolding in the last few years, and it's also these guys have been battling for a long time now, like thousands of years. And if you could predict that that might be the case, or you understand that that's a risk, and so you go, I'm going to hold majority or maybe half or at least a large percentage in Bitcoin, hold it backed by a 24-word phrase that I can literally have on a piece of paper. Don't even have to take the little device with it. And put it on a steel plate, put it on paper, whatever, put it in my pocket. And when bombs start coming and I got to run and I got to evacuate, I've got my 24-word phrase. I can rock up in the US, be accepted in as a refugee or whatever country it may be, to like you'd go wherever's safest. And you can download a wallet, enter 24-word phrase, and boom, you've got all this capital, and you can exchange it in whatever currency the country you've landed in. And I just think it's superior money on the go. It's superior store of value. And it's actually the fact that it's not physical is actually a positive, not a flaw.
I agree. I think thinking something needs to be physical for it to have value is part of the scam, because you can hold, I mean, I've talked about this a lot, but like you can hold $1 in your hand when you're in America, right? But when you read the text on it, it says, this note is legal tender for all public and private debts. So you're holding it, but when you read the letters, it literally tells you the thing you're holding does not have any value. So it literally says it, right? So why does the one with the 1 on it is more valuable than the one with the 5 or the 10? Because they are all backed by debt. It's imaginary. So I mean that would be my rebuttal to that. But people think, they need to be able to touch it. Okay, that's cool. Bitcoin is stored in a metaphysical way. It's stored in letters and numbers. So I can take a piece of paper right now and I can write down letters and numbers that are a private key to a Bitcoin wallet that maybe holds $1 million worth of Bitcoin. Does it have value then? Because then it's tangible. You can hold the paper with the code on it, right? I can even put that paper in a vault in Switzerland, physically put the paper in a vault in Switzerland, the private key, the access code to the wallet. And when I have the public key and I send Bitcoin to it, I basically send it inside the vault in Switzerland. So it's crazy. Like, think about that. It's like when this is how old I am. I'll share, but like when SMS got introduced for the first time, I had like one of the first mobile phones, and my friend had one of the first mobile phones, and he was like on the other side of the soccer field. We would play soccer, and we would send each other text messages, and we would be so mind blown that there was like an invisible message like flying through the air and like landing in this other phone, and then it would show up on the screen. That was mind blowing. But this is the exact same concept. I can send value through the air, through the metaphysical state. In a metaphysical state, I can send it, and I can basically teleport it. I can have it land in this other spot, because without only the private key gives me access to that little piece of Bitcoin, right? Like the public key, the wallet address is just a directional. It's just a direction. It's not the access, right? So yeah, it's I think this is also why Bitcoin is hard to understand. It's a mix of something digital and a physical. Like, it's bounded in physical energy, but it doesn't only exist in a digital way. You interact with it in a digital way, right? Like with a wallet. A wallet is basically like a viewer that you can like actually view the numbers, the amount of Bitcoin on a screen, right? It's a viewer for that address, and a tool that you can interact with, but it's not on the wallet, which is interesting. Why is it called a wallet? Like, usually the thing is in the wallet, but here it's not, right? So yeah, I love that part also about Bitcoin. Like, it still blows my mind if I think about it. The fact that you can just send value back and forth with anyone in the world without anyone censoring it or being in between that. Some people are very rigid about this line, like it's a peer-to-peer cash system, and then they're saying no, it's not, because not everyone is paying with it and this and that. No, that's different. It is peer-to-peer cash. I can send it to you right now without anyone in between. So that is the peer-to-peer cash, period. The fact that if you want to accept it or not for whatever product or service you deliver to me is totally up to you, right? Like, that's way more an organic thing. Like, do I want to accept Bitcoin as a money or not? Well, we talked about how many people have no they don't even know what money is. Therefore they don't know the problem they have with that money, and therefore they don't even understand that Bitcoin might be a solution, which is a very logical thing. That's going to take a lot of time.
Yeah, I'll share like a little bit of an experience of sending peer-to-peer cash over continents. I watch a live stream every day. Shout out to my boy Jerry Loves Freedom, and he runs a live stream for like 4 or 5 hours. People tune in, and he has a little QR code in the top right corner, and it's connected to a Lightning Network address. So basically, a layer two built on Bitcoin. They brought in a layer two basically just to speed up transactions, because Bitcoin transactions can take up to 10 minutes. They could be a bit more costly, still might only be a few cents, a few dollars. Anyway, but we don't need to go into that now. But a Lightning Network allows for people to send value literally across the world in seconds, but it's cutting out people like Visa, MasterCard, centralized banks, even app permissions, admins, CEOs, everything gets cut out in the middle. And so I'll scan it with my phone, the QR code from my Bitcoin wallet. I use the Strike app and send in how many Satoshis I want to send to Jerry. He is literally receiving it in like a few seconds, reads it out on his video as he's living in Las Vegas, and reads the message that I've attached to this bit of value. And so we call it a value for value on the live stream. If I've gotten, you know, learnt something from his video or just enjoyed mucking around in the comments, oh, well, I'm going to send him some value because he's given me some value, entertainment, knowledge, education. I'm going to send him value for value. And guess what? It's on YouTube live stream, but they don't even take a cut. Maybe I shouldn't be saying this on here, but the QR code skips them, even though it's their platform, and gets straight to his wallet, and no one had to give him permission. And it happened in a few seconds. So it is happening now. Peer-to-peer cash is a reality. I think when we talk about a median of exchange, that is yet to come. Just going to your local grocery store or worldwide, maybe that's not fully worldwide accepted and adopted, but it is happening. We see Steak and Shake, over 400 fast food restaurants across the US accepting Bitcoin as payment through the Lightning Network as well. And so you can literally buy fast food. It will tell you $1 equals 997 Satoshis. And so it's literally at that stage. It is in a trial run. It is happening. It is unfolding. Things are about to speed up. And so I see a lot of, I think it's Switzerland. Switzerland has a lot of companies and businesses that accept Bitcoin, a really big grocery store over there. So it is happening. It is reality. Eventually, you will be kind of forced to use it, or it will be a part of your phone before you know it. And so wouldn't you want to just jump the gun, get in early, acknowledge it's a scarce asset, so you want as much as possible, and potentially unlock the future wealth of the world, where wealth flips on its head.
Couldn't agree more.
Very exciting stuff. Before we wrap up things, because I know time is scarce, and the scarcest asset is time. So last message would be, what would be your message to obviously millennials, but also my Gen Z and then Gen X? What is your final message to the young people of the world?
The boomers had real estate, Gen X had the S&P 500, and I think the millennials and Gen Z have Bitcoin to start creating, growing, and maintaining their wealth. Like every generation has an asset that is either discovered or created that they are uniquely primed for to understand, or basically, that's their opportunity, sort of their luck, right? I like the quote that luck is when preparation meets opportunity, and the opportunities are abundant. There are constant opportunities. um, I think Bitcoin is a once in a lifetime, or some people say once in a species discovery, like fire. That's not my opinion. There are big asset managers that have reports on how Bitcoin is akin to fire. You can only, or the wheel, like you can only invent that once. The concept of the wheel, the concept of Bitcoin, and that is your opportunity. But you have to be prepared to take advantage of this opportunity. And so I'll tie it back to what I said in the beginning. Like, I think it's amazing that you tried all this different stuff. You were interested and curious enough, and then you did the work to realize, hey, I'm trying to, or I'm being forced, if I can use the word forced, right, to participate in a financial system that is not designed to help me. That is also designed in a way for me to never understand it. And so you don't have to understand the financial system. You cannot understand the financial system at the deepest layers. But once you understand that there is another way, there's a parallel financial system that is not tied to any country, any person, any religion, any location. It's a decentralized financial system that can be used voluntarily, permissionless by anyone in the world. Just from a rational point of view, that is a better solution. And the crazy thing to add to that is that you don't have to believe me. People don't have to believe you. You can actually verify this for yourself. So all the information about this is already out there on the internet. All the young people know how to get information on the internet, but it's up to you to do the work and to think about what you're seeing on the internet. Right. And so what you said in the beginning, like, oh, I saw all these other cryptos and then I was hoping and hoping. And, hope is not a strategy. You have to do the work. So for anyone who is ready to do the work, you could, for example, start on a website I created. It's called Start with Bitcoin. I have 6 videos from all from other people that I think in the past 12 years are probably the best videos to understand Bitcoin. It's the total watch time is like 4.5 hours. But I mean, if you're 19, 20, 21 and you have, well, probably like 80 years ahead of you with all the developments and longevity and stuff, why wouldn't you spend 50 or 100 hours studying how to secure yourself financially in the future, which doesn't mean to be crazy rich or whatever, but it means to not get poor because there are other people that control the money that you're forced to use. So study Bitcoin and opt out of fiat money.
Awesome, Bram. Where can people find you on Spotify, on YouTube, on Twitter? What are all your handles before we wrap it up here?
Yeah, so on Twitter X, it's BramK, BRAMK, so my last name plus a K. And on YouTube, you can search for Bitcoin Bram or Bitcoin for Millennials. Same yeah, on Apple or Spotify, just search for Bitcoin for Millennials and you'll find my podcast.
Well, thanks so much for coming on. It's been a bit of a journey in this conversation, but I've really enjoyed it, and I hope the viewers enjoy it as well. I hope we can do this again sometime. But everyone, like,
Let's do it.
subscribe, leave a comment, and appreciate it, guys. Cheers.